Hello everyone, Ember here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one, I'm going to be going over the new cards revealed for the set Crimson Haze. So the full set has been revealed, thank goodness, and this will release on Japan next Friday, which happens to be the release date actually for Temporal Forces. So yeah, which is, it's exciting because it means as soon as we get the new Temporal Forces cards and we start to build decks with them, Japan will have the opportunity to essentially build decks from a bunch of new cards, which I guess is kind of frustrating in a way. We'd rather these releases were simultaneous, but it would also remove a lot of content from YouTube. Like, I enjoy making videos about upcoming deck profiles, but I know I'm kind of like sidetracking a bit here. So we'll go on to the main translations. And, as always, let me know what you think of these cards down below. Is there any decks that stand out to you, and will you be playing any of them? So, yeah, should be pretty cool. So kicking things off, we have a Tangrowth line. Sadly, I don't think this Tangrowth is anything too special. It is kind of funny though, Loom Over doing 150 but then 10 less for each damage counter on its Pokemon. To be honest, I don't think this card would have seen that much use if it didn't have this negative effect, which would probably, give a sense of the state of single prize stage 1 Pokemon. But yeah, either way, the ability is quite nice. The attack obviously can be quite played around, if your opponent can spread some damage and whatnot. I know Manaphy exists, so Radiant Greninja isn't too much of a threat, but yeah, I guess it's like not the most unplayable card in the world, and you could surely make a budget deck out of this. And even in GLC, it actually would be okay, I guess. But yeah, you could definitely make a budget deck, and of course, like pre-release and stuff, this card will be okay. So it's not like complete bulk, but it's still like a 2-star card basically. Princer, which we did review recently on the Macargo EX Spotlight video. Slow Crunch to Scalded Energy, and then your opponent's active is KO'd at the end of your opponent's next turn, which is okay if you have a way of locking them in place with like Spidops and Calamitous Wasteland, but sadly outside of that, I don't think this attack is very good, and it's mainly because it requires a Grass and a Colorless, which is just a wee bit awkward to power up, and there's no Raihan post-rotation, so yeah, it feels a bit bad, but yeah. Pinsir could be quite funny. Then we have an Ariados with a very funny looking Spinnerack. Look like he's been kind of like copy and pasted onto the art for some reason. I don't know if maybe it's just the outline didn't quite work for me, but yeah, a bit odd. Then we've got this Ariados, which says your opponent's active Pokemon's evolution Pokemon actually retreat cost is 1 colorless more, and then your attack does 30 more damage for each colorless in your opponent's active retreat cost. So it's basically just like a mini Spidops, basically, which is kind of cute. So if we ever get like a Skyfield reprint or something, or maybe even just, you play a bunch of Spidops, a bunch of Ariados, and that's your deck, fair enough. It's not terrible. It's not a terrible idea, but it does seem like a lot of setup. But at the very least, you only take more energy, so I guess it's not too outrageous. It's just a shame we're losing like level ball to rotation, because then that would have helped a lot. But I guess this with Spidops EX won't be a terrible deck, and obviously a good partner for Pinsir as well. So if you like Spidops and you like messing around with your opponent's retreat cost, then this will be a fun card for you. And Leafeon is alright. Just one of these heal all damage effects, but you have to accelerate energy. Yeah, it feels a bit bad on a stage 1, to be honest. This Iron Leaves, however, I do think is kind of cool. Vengeful Edge doing 100, and if anything was knocked out during your opponent's last turn, it does 60 more. So effectively, you can do 320 to a Charizard, which is quite nice, for a Lost Box. And it is Grass double colors. So if we ever get, like 2 energy back, I think Double Turbo is just a bit too weak to have uses on most of these cards. The -20 is such a negative effect. But still, I think, if we ever get 2 energy back, counter energy, that kind of thing, double colors even, Iron Leaves could be playable at least. And, certainly something to consider for Lost Box. So yeah, that's quite cool. Then we have, I believe, is a Poltergeist, and then this has just been called Sinstrature accidentally. So this Poltergeist does actually have quite a nice ability, Shadowy Concealment. It's basically just what Bidoof has, so it won't take any damage while it's on the bench, which is quite nice. And then this Sinstrature EX, which sadly I don't think is as good as the regular Sinstrature, which was revealed for the next Japan set, Teal Mask, I think it's called. So yeah, it's a bit weird that this Sinstrature EX isn't as good as that card, but either way, it's a fun card, I guess. 240 HP, Grass type, bit weak off the bat, not gonna lie. However, it does have the very fun attack Infusion Retribution. Choose one of your opponent's Pokemon, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon for each basic Grass in your discard pile. Then shuffle those energy cards back into your deck. Now, if this had just said something like shuffle 3 or 4 of those energy, not just all of them, because this is basically saying like you have to discard all those grass energy, and even just to get a cool KO, you then have to shuffle them all back into your deck, which just feels kind of bad, you know? I'd rather not do that. And I know we have stuff like Explorer's Guidance to help you discard loads of energy. We have Curlia, of course, it's still in standard, which is cool. And the Sinstitcher, the regular one, just says discard up to 3 grass from your Pokemon, and it does 70 damage for each one. So in theory, you could pair this up with the regular Sinstitcher, which is cool. So there is like fun deck potential here, but you know, I'm not going to say this card is competitive because, to be honest, I just don't think it's that competitive. But it's still a pretty cool card nonetheless. Then we have a Ninetales line, which I'm just going to say right off the bat is GLC fodder. GLC can have this card. Does 90 damage plus Burning Confusion. It's alright in GLC. It's pretty solid damage, but aside from that, it's not doing anything in Standard, unfortunately. Then we have Magcargo EX, which sadly a lot of people are like very divided on this card. You know, some people say it's going to be playable. Other people are like, yeah, no, this is trash. I personally think this card is moderately playable to an extent. But the main issue with this Magcargo is the energy cost, right? 3 Fire Energy, that's not playing games here. It is very hard to pay for in this day and age. Like, we don't have Welder anymore. If we had Welder, cool, that would have been fine. But sadly, just relying on Basin and Mela, I just don't think will be enough. It's just going to be a wee bit too slow. I know Gouging Fire costs 3 energy to use its attack, but Gouging Fire has Professor Sada. Magcargo does not. Magcargo has Charizards to charge up energy, and that's about it. So yeah, it feels kind of bad, but I do love Magcargo, and the 1-hit KO potential is there, so I definitely think you can make a very fun deck out of this card. It probably won't be expensive because of how playable it is, but, you know, that could be a good thing, actually, so it's a bit cheaper to build. But yeah, Magcargo looks kind of fun either way. Then we have a Torkoal, which is... I don't even know if this card is good enough for GLC. Honestly don't think it is, but yeah, Torkoal exists. Then we have an Infernape that can accelerate a basic fighting or basic fire, or just one of each from your hand to one of your Pokemon, which is quite cool because there is that Crydon that for like 2 fighting and a fire energy does 280, which is quite cool. So like you could do some fun pairings there. There's also like the Torkoal, which does 80 damage, like for each energy attached to it. You have to like flip a coin though. Yeah, I think there's some like fun uses with this Infernape, but honestly, just being a stage 2, kind of awkward to set up, a bit slower. I know that some people think post-rotation will be a much slower format. I personally think that's wishful thinking at the very best, but you know, I don't want to like dissuade people from, of course, like experimenting with decks and playing things. And if you can get wins with this card, then that's absolutely fine. But you know, I would just exercise caution and not, you know, overhype bad cards, basically. But you know, I still think this card will be fun. It'll be fun to use. There's definitely some fun stuff you can do with it, so it's cool. But you know, just kind of like be careful with saying things like, oh yeah, this card is definitely playable when, you know, variants of this card I've never seen play before in the past. So, you know, it's, you know, something worth bearing in mind, but it's a cool card. We have Chi-Yu with Ground Melt, which does 120 if there's a stadium in play, which you're like, oh cool, Magma Basin. However, you have to discard that stadium. Like, why? Like, well, why was this? Why'd you have to discard the stadium? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, it's already only doing like 120 for 2 energy. 120 won't 2-hit KO most relevant cards. It's only going to 2-hit KO like basic EX Pokemon, really. Like, it's not going to deal with V-Stars. It's not going to deal with Charizard, certainly. So, yeah, it feels kind of bad. But, yeah, you could use this as stadium control in, like, Fire GLC, which is cool. But it's also, like, got some nice draw power. But sadly, this does have to combat with, or compete, I should say, with the Chi-Yu from Paradox Rift, which I think was just a lot better in most ways. So, yeah, it's a bit weird they kind of reprinted a similar card with a similar weird effect. But, yeah, Chi-Yu, don't think that's very good. Then we have a Corphish and a Crawdunt. Crawdunt has a snipe move that can discard cards in top of your opponent's deck. Could make a bit of a meme deck out of that. And then 180 for 3 energy, so could pair that up with Baxcalibur if you really wanted to. And we have Glaceon with Deep Chill, does 30 damage, and the end of your opponent's next turn, place 9 damage counters on the defending Pokemon. I would like this attack a lot more if it had like a built-in retreat lock, or, you know, did a lot more damage, but yeah, 9 damage counters just isn't really a lot. We have a Fion with another generic energy press attack, sadly not very good. Then we have a Frogadier line, but no Greninja because it is a fighting type, it is a Terra type, so no Greninja for now, but Froakies, finding more Froakies is always nice, although you will be able to use Buddy Poffin to find more of them. And this is relevant because Greninja is very good. So yeah, just something to look forward to at the end of the video. Then we have this Cramorant, which I personally don't think is actually that bad. Discard all energy from this Pokemon, 120 Snipe. pretty good. I think this card is pretty good. It just means that if you can ramp through energy towards the late game, then you don't have that pressure of needing to find a boss to take the last prize card, if that's how your prize mapping has worked. So you can just snipe something, in theory, right? I know Manaphy exists, and that's going to be a problem, of course, for all spread Pokemon until Manaphy rotates. But as soon as Manaphy rotates, these kind of cards get a lot better, so something to work, something to look forward to, I guess, but something to work out, and yeah, definitely think Cramorant has at least some potential. This Walking Wake, however, I think is a bit bad. Put up to 9 damage counters on this Pokemon. This attack does 20 damage for each damage counter you put on this way. I did the math ages ago. I don't think this card is very good, and your opponent just has to poke it for it to die, but still, it could be quite funny. You could use Starter, of course, to get this thing going, which is quite nice. It doesn't really have a lot of synergy, though, with the Walking Wake EX, which is a shame, but I mean, it's an okay card in all sense. It's all right if we had like potions and screw up nets and whatnot, but yeah, I mean, it's okay, right? It's fine. It's definitely okay for like GLC and stuff, so that's a cool thing. But yeah, it's a fun card to mess around with, but we'll see. Then we have Zapdos, which can do 190 for 3 energy, which is quite nice actually on a single prize basic. But you have to discard all energy from this Pokemon, and we lose Flaffy to rotation. So you'll have to rely on Generator to do this, which is a bit sketch. Or like the Pawmot, I guess, that accelerates 1 energy from hand. Is there anything else that can accelerate energy? Like Energy Sticker, I guess, is always an option, but seems a bit flippant, no pun intended. But yeah, this Zapdos, it's quite cool. I like seeing cards like this because I'm like trying to build a base set recreation for Expanded. And so whenever I see like interesting Gen 1 Pokemon cards, I'm always like, oh, cool, that would be nice for a cube kind of format. But yeah, the Zapdos is pretty cool. It's quite nice because it's pretty balanced in most regards. But, I don't think it'll see much play in Standard, unfortunately. But, it's cool. Then we have another Heliolisk, which is just abysmal. I'm genuinely confused as to how they thought this card was even worth printing at this point. Like, if you like these Pokemon, then this is cool, but 70 damage and then 20 to itself. Could this card get any worse? The answer is probably no. That is genuinely shocking. Shockingly bad. Then we have Morpeko, which does have some synergy with Magcargo, which is quite nice. Allows you to look at the top card of your deck, and then you may discard it. So if it's an energy, then you don't have to discard it, which is quite nice for Magcargo. Or you could discard it and then hope you discard an energy. So cool. Also, the attack can accelerate some energy, so you could use this to ramp up energy to a Zapdos if you really wanted to, but it's an option there for Morpeko. Then we have a Belly Bolt, which sadly is just generic, pretty boring. Iron Thorn ZX is quite cool. Basically says if it's in the active spot, Pokemon with a Roblox in play, except any future Pokemon, however, don't have any abilities, which is quite alarming because it means stuff like Charizard, Pidgeot, and TV all don't have their abilities. Sounds fantastic, right? Also means that ancient Pokemon don't have their abilities. They have a Roblox, but don't think there's many, but they don't have an ability like Sandy Shocks, which is quite cool. Luminion V won't you be able to use its ability. Squawkabilly won't be able to use its ability. Honestly, quite disruptive. And Bolt Cyclone's pretty good, actually, doing 140, allowing you to move an energy. Yeah, seems pretty good. And what do we have here? Jifrag is okay. Farigiraf, I think I already reviewed this card, but 40 damage for each stage 1 Pokemon you have in play. For 2 colorless, it feels bad. I don't know, there's something off about this card. You need a lot of Pokemon for it to do any real damage. I think the best way to play this card will be with like a 4/4 line and Barrel and not much else. But yeah, feels kind of bad though. Don't feel you're doing enough damage. But yeah, then we have a Florges line, which is just a bit bad. Sadly, we can move on from that. And Amorous is at least a bit interesting. Love Renaissance doing 120 more damage. Yeah, so doing 200 if you share a type with one of your opponent's Pokemon in play, which is quite cool because stuff like Bibarel and Manaphy are very common these days. So you could potentially do 200 for 3. Seems all right. Maybe a potential card for Gardevoir. Don't know. Could be all right. Then Screamtail EX, which might be played in Gardevoir just for Sudden Shriek. If you go second, your opponent can't play any supporters next turn. Could be quite volatile, but other than that, I don't think this card is particularly great. Then we have a Hisuian Arcanine, which honestly I feel a bit sorry for this card. It does 30 damage, and if your bench Pokemon are damaged, it does 120 instead, and it's for no energy. This is alright with stuff like Dodrio, but truth be told, I'd much rather use the Arcanine from Lost Origin that does 160 if you have no cards in your hand. I would just rather use that card. I know this one's easier to use technically, but you're not really doing a lot of damage. Like with a choice belt, I think it's choice belt or choice band, one of the two, you get a KO on Arceus, which is quite nice, but realistically, this card isn't super great. It might be alright just as a Dodrio box or something, but yeah, Hisuian Arcanine not really doing it for me, sadly. You know, we need more interesting single prizers, and this kind of ticks all the boxes, but yeah, I don't think it's super great. Then we have a Nose Pass. Okay. Then we have a Probopass, which sadly is terrible. And then we get to the best fighting card in the set by a mile, and that is Greninja. So this is a Terra type, 310 fighting HP Pokemon, has the attack for a single water energy, and I want to let that sink in for a second there. A single water energy, 170 damage. So that's a one hit kill on the minion V, by the way. 170 damage. I want to let that sink in. 170 damage for a single energy. So with a choice, not a choice belt, a maximum belt, you'll be able to get a KO on stuff like Iron Leaves and Iron Valiant. That's how crazy this card is. You may search your deck for any one card and put it into your hand. So on top of doing 170 for a single energy, let's talk about that for a second. You may search your deck for any one card and put it into your hand. I know your opponent can play an Iono, right? But they're only going to be able to do that maybe 3-4 times a game if they play 4 Iono. There'll be times where your opponent can't play an Iono simply because they don't have one in hand, or simply because they need to play a boss or a different supporter card. So you'll be able to keep that card. And honestly, the effect of being able to tutor out a card is just a bonus, really. The 170 for a single energy. That is scary. That is really scary. Like, we thought Garchomp was silly doing 160 for 1 energy and accelerating 3 energy. This is 170 and you tutor any one card. Like, could this card get any more ridiculous? Well, yes, it can, because Duplicate's Barrage for a water double colors. Discard 2 energy from this Pokemon, so you could just discard a double turbo if you really wanted to. Does 120 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. So you could just Snipey Barrels. you can just Snipey Barrels and Charmanders, Charmeleons even. Yeah, seems kind of crazy. I know Manaphy's a thing. We can boss Manaphy, clone it if you really want to. But yeah, very, very scary cards. I definitely think this has potential. I definitely think we'll see play. Maybe even with Baxcalibur. I know that's 2 stage 2s, but I'm sure someone will try. You could even use Palkia just to ramp 3 energy out of nowhere. And also, the 170 also sets up other KOs, also allowing you to search your deck for any one card so you could get an energy that you need. Yeah, this card is terrifying to me. I think this card will see a lot of play. So, yeah, if this somehow doesn't end up being broken, then yeah, it's just a crazy good card anyway. So, yeah, 5 out of 5 stars for me for that one. Then we have a Hawlucha, which is at least moderately interesting, actually. It does 140 if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, which is actually pretty decent for 2 energy. That's actually really decent. Allows you to get a KO on Arceus, which is nice. So definitely like this card. Alright in GLC, actually. Very nice in GLC. So you could, well, you can't use Raihan. I keep thinking Raihan survives rotation, and it doesn't. It's really annoying. So there's no Raihan for this, which is, yeah, that just sucks, actually. No Raihan. What could you use? EXP share sticker, I guess. But you probably don't need to use this more than once or twice in theory, because you'll start getting prizes. But the fact that you could use this at any point in the game, assuming you're just losing, is cool. So at least it's not like your opponent has 6 prize cards or something daft like that. You can use this throughout the game. So yeah, seems like a pretty fun card. Then we have a Tinglu, which might be good for fighting GLC spread decks, which are, I believe they're a thing with like, was it Palossand? Yeah, Palossand in stage 1. So Grand Crack, if a stadium is in play, plenty of good stadiums for fighting type GLC. This attack does 30 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, then discard that stadium. So for some reason, Pokemon just hate stadiums with a set. First a Chi-Yu, now Tinglu. Sensing a theme here, but yeah. So there's Tinglu. It's also safe to assume that we'll see Wu Qian and Chen Pao, I guess, in the next set as well. But yeah, Grand Crack, definitely pretty decent. Is this decent in standard? I mean, 30 spreads quite a lot, but especially on a basic that's moderately tanky. But I'm not sure if, well, yeah, it might be all right, actually. It could be okay in standard, but I'll have to see about that. Then we have an Applin and a Diplin. Both are terrible. I really want Hydrapple to be a good card. Please, if nothing else, make Hydrapple a good card in the next set. We won't see Hydrapple revealed for quite a while now. I'm saying at minimum 2 or 3 weeks. But yeah, Hydrapple, I really, really want it to be a good card. It is a stage 2. I think it's already confirmed to be an EX because, let's face it, they probably will want to give all the new Pokemon EX cards. So Hydrapple EX, stage 2 dragon type, please, please, for the love of God, make it good. But yeah, Diplin, as it stands, not very good. You could make a meme deck, but yeah, not very good. Eevee exists, but Ascension is quite nice. So if we ever get an EVX, I mean, let's face it, it feels like a given at this point that we'll get EVXs, but yeah, Ascension feels good to have that back. So yeah, pick up 4 copies of these while they're still cheap, by the way. So yeah, that'd be cool. Snorlax with the with the 2 very memey attacks. Refuel, attach an energy. If you do, heal 60, and then for absolute whopping 5 energy, 160. This is very much a GLC card for sure. But yeah, you could use this in pre-release for some funny games. Standard, maybe not so much, but yeah, definitely with GLC, this is quite annoying. But then we get on to the last colorless Pokemon, and also the one that's headlining the set, Blood Moon Ursaluna, which honestly, I still feel kind of bad that this is a Radiant Charizard style reprint. You know, I'd wish they'd come up with something a bit more unique, especially since the ability of Blood Moon Ursaluna has 3 different effects. I'm not saying that this Pokemon card should have an ability that has 3 different effects. I'm just saying they could have picked something a bit more interesting than Radiant Charizard 2.0. But it's a cool card. It will be played in stuff like Lugia. Lost Box could even play this if they really wanted to. You know, you could use this in a variety of other decks. Basically, anything that plays energy. Truth be told, you could play this card. But yeah, I'm not sure if you really want to be doing 240 in the late game, but at the very least, you are quite tanky at 260 HP. So yeah, could be quite a good card overall. Then we have Unfair Stamp, which I personally think will be. I think this card is kind of broken, but we'll see. So you can only use this card after one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Each player shuffles their hand to a deck. You draw 5. Your opponent only draws 2 cards. Now, it's called Unfair Stamp for a reason, right? And what's really funny is we have stuff like Arbok EX, which I'm pretty sure says discard 2 cards from your opponent's hand, if I remember correctly. And Scovalion, which says discard the top card of your opponent's deck and a random card from your opponent's hand. You know, I'm not sure if Judge survives rotation. I don't think it does. But there is a supporter. I'm not sure if it's a part of these reveals or if it's... Yeah, it's Lucian. So each player shuffles their hand and puts on the bottom of the deck. If either player put any cards on the bottom of the deck in his or his way, each player then flips a coin. If heads, that player draws 6. If tails, they draw 3. So you could just annihilate your opponent's hand with this card and Lucian. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to be the most optimal way, because you could flip tails as well and draw 3 cards and you might not find Unfair Stamp. But that's one of the many examples about why this card could be crazy. And, you know, we've all been in that situation where we've been low on price cards. Our opponent has played an oh no, and then we go oh no because we have nothing in play. So, yeah. This will definitely win people games, so that's scary. Enhanced Hammer is a cool reprint to see. We'll definitely see some play of Lugia. So then we can take a look at Hyperoma, which says search your deck from the 3 stage 1 Pokemon, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Now, as A specs go, I really don't think this card is that strong. You know, like Hero's Cape, plus 100 HP, Maximum Belt, plus 50 damage to EX Pokemon. Yeah, this definitely feels a lot weaker than those cards. You know, even in, you know, a stage 1 box deck like Scizor, I'd much rather have the damage modifier or, you know, the Gust from Prime Catcher than just being able to find 3 stage 1s realistically. Truth be told, don't have that much difficulty finding Pokemon. However, you know, I could definitely see, you know, the argument that this card is at least playable, and, you know, it's better than Master Ball, I guess, in those decks. So, yeah, it's not the worst card in the world, but, you know, it feels, you know, kind of bad. I'd rather play other aspects than this one, but yeah. Switch, Pokemon Catcher, and then Love Ball. So Love Ball allows you to search your deck for a Pokemon with the same name as one of your opponent's Pokemon in play. Reveal it and put it into your hand. Yeah, not particularly great card, but yeah. You know, even in like a barrel heavy format, I'd rather just play Ultra Ball and stuff. So yeah, Love Ball, not particularly great. Survival Cast says if this Pokemon card is attached to has full HP and would be one hit KO'd by attack. So it loses all its HP, gets knocked out, and its remaining HP becomes 10 instead, then discard this card. So quite an interesting card. It's essentially the Focus Sash that was exclusive for fighting types. Now it's for any type in general. Honestly, I don't think this card is terrible, but I don't think it's brilliant either. It's like one of those weird things where you could play it in some decks, but to be honest, like again, the damage, I think it's just a much better thing, or like the Gust is better. But, you know, for something like Wug Trio, potentially, I know this is like a wee bit niche on the niche side of things, but Wugtrio only has 90 HP, and Wugtrio doesn't need any damage modifiers. Or even something like Great Tusk. Great Tusk is actually a very scary option for this card because you know that your opponent is always going to be able to want to KO them. So you might as well get a free KO, essentially. So yeah, the fact that it activates and then we get the 10 HP remaining. Of course, we do have to worry about Lost Vacuum, actually. That's a good point. But yeah, Survival Cast. At least I'll have some niche users. Lucky Helmet is a cool reprint. Quite like Lucky Helmet. Caretaker is alright. Draw 2 cards, then if Community Center is in play, shuffles Caretaker back into your deck. I mean, it's alright. It's not great, but, it's there. Lucian is the more interesting one for sure. It's kind of like the old Professor Birch, but to be honest, do you really want to flip a coin for your draw supporter? Probably not. But if you do have stuff like the barrel in play, then this is alright, and could be very potent disruption to your opponent, so I quite like the idea of playing Lucian in a barrel deck. We'll definitely have to experiment with this card. As for Perrin, reveal 2 Pokemon from your hand, shove them into your deck, and then search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon, I think. So yeah, search your deck for up to that many Pokemon. So that's quite a cool card. It's basically just double Pokemon communication, but on a supporter, which, I mean, communication did see a lot of play, but this is a supporter card, so you will have to, be sure that you're actually getting forward in the game. I'm not sure really about this card. It feels a bit slow, to be honest, but it's cool. Lana's Assistance is basically just a nerfed version of Clara, which is quite funny. Put up to 3 in any combination of Pokemon that doesn't have a Roblox and basic energy from the discard pile into your hand. Could be quite nice in stuff like Lost Box that wants to get back specific attackers like Cramorant and Zamazenta. But to be honest, I don't think this card will see that much play compared to its counterparts. Community Center, if they played a support card, players may heal 10 damage from each of their Pokemon. It's alright. To be honest, it's okay. Healing 10 doesn't feel grand though, so unless there's like some super niche situations where this is good, I don't think this card will see much play. And then we also have Boomerang Energy, which is actually pretty good. Says this card would be discarded by the effect of an attack. You can then return it to that Pokemon after attacking. So it's basically just a reprint of Burning Energy from the XY era, which is quite cool because you could use this with Greninja, for example. So yeah, that's quite nice. Or Garchomp, actually. So yeah, it's been the Crimson Haze reveals. Let me know what you think down below. And yeah, thank you for watching.